King Charles smiled and waved to crowds this morning, a day after spending time in hospital dealing with side effects from his cancer treatment.
The royal family is facing a moment unlike any before. A king battling illness, a future queen quietly rising, and a family torn between tradition and change. Behind palace walls, private struggles are shaping the future of the monarchy. What really happened inside that emotional family meeting? Why is Catherine being positioned for more than just a supporting role? And could Prince Harry return in an unexpected twist? On a quiet, traditional day at Westminster Abbey, something unusual caught the attention of onlookers. King Charles III and Prince William were seen sharing a brief but telling moment before the Order of the Bath service. It wasn't dramatic or staged, just a simple gesture, a gentle pat on the arm from father to son. But in the context of recent events, it carried far more weight than words could express. This gesture was one of many small signs that something significant was happening behind palace walls. In early 2024, King Charles made an announcement that shifted the focus of the monarchy and raised difficult questions about its future. Known for his measured public presence, the king surprised many when he chose to speak openly about his health. Specifically, a diagnosis that revealed he was being treated for cancer. The moment was notable not only for its personal nature, but also for breaking long-standing royal conventions. Never before had a reigning British monarch shared such a serious health condition with the public while still on the throne. The story began in January, with what was initially described as a routine medical procedure. The palace informed the public that the king would undergo treatment for an enlarged prostate, something common and generally non-threatening. At the time, the message from royal spokespeople was calm and straightforward, saying it was a precaution and there was no cause for concern. The public response was respectful, but mostly quiet. Many assumed the issue would soon be resolved and the king would continue with his duties as usual. However, behind the scenes, doctors had identified a different and more serious concern during further tests. It was not just the prostate issue, it was cancer. The specific type was not made public, but the news marked a turning point for the royal household. By February, the diagnosis was confirmed, and those closest to the king were informed. The atmosphere inside the palace shifted quickly. Advisors and senior family members were deeply affected. Conversations began about how to handle the news, whether to follow tradition and keep it private, or to take a different path. Historically, the British royal family has kept personal matters, particularly health issues, as quiet as possible. The goal has often been to protect the public image of strength and continuity. But King Charles made a different choice. He believed it was important to be honest with the people, even if the truth was difficult. He decided not to keep his diagnosis hidden, even though he was aware of the risks that public reaction could bring. On 5 February 2024, Buckingham Palace released a short statement. It confirmed that the king had been diagnosed with cancer and had begun regular treatment. While the type of cancer was not disclosed, the tone of the message was measured and serious. The aim was to inform the public without causing panic. It was clear that every word in the statement had been carefully considered. The announcement quickly made headlines across the UK and around the world. But unlike many royal stories that often lead to gossip or public debate, this news prompted an overwhelmingly empathetic response. Broadcasters, newspapers, and online media struck a respectful tone. Commentators who usually focused on palace drama instead expressed concern and compassion. The story was no longer about royal appearances or titles. It was about a man facing an uncertain future and choosing to speak openly about it. Public figures, from politicians to celebrities, shared messages of support. Health charities praised the king's openness, saying that it would likely help reduce stigma around cancer and encourage others to take their health seriously. According to Macmillan Cancer Support, there was a noticeable increase in visits to their website and calls to their helpline in the days following the announcement. Doctors reported a rise in people booking cancer screenings and checkups. For many, the king's honesty brought awareness to something they may have otherwise ignored. Inside the royal family, the impact of the diagnosis was even more personal. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, found himself under growing pressure. As the heir to the throne, he had long known that his future role would come with immense responsibility. But few expected that he would need to prepare for it this soon. Watching his father face such a serious illness reminded him of the realities of succession and the emotional weight that comes with it. William continued to appear at public events and perform royal duties, but observers noticed a slight shift. His tone was more reflective, his speeches more personal. He maintained his composure as expected, but those close to him said he was quietly struggling with the emotional toll. At the same time, he was supporting his wife, Princess Catherine, who was dealing with her own health challenges. Queen Camilla also played a central role during this time. She remained close to her husband throughout his treatment and continued to fulfill her royal responsibilities. Those familiar with her approach said she initially wanted to shield the king and the public from unnecessary concern. She feared that any news about his health could be twisted or misunderstood. But as she stood by him, her view began to shift. She recognized the strength it took for him to be transparent and the positive effect it was having on the country. In private, she offered steady support, both emotionally and logistically, helping him through treatments and official engagements. What stood out most in this chapter of the king's reign was not only his diagnosis, but the way it changed the public's perception of the monarchy. By showing vulnerability and speaking from a place of honesty, King Charles offered a rare human moment that many found relatable. People across the UK, regardless of their views on the royal family, responded to that. It reminded them that even those in the highest positions face the same fears and challenges as everyone else. This marked a broader shift in the tone of the monarchy. Traditionally seen as distant and ceremonial, the royal family, through Charles's personal moment, became more approachable. It wasn't about appearing flawless anymore. It was about being real, especially in difficult times. In a country that has often looked to its royals for stability, this honesty offered a different kind of reassurance. The public's response was telling. Polls taken in the weeks following the announcement showed a small but notable rise in support for the monarchy, particularly among younger adults. While long-term support for the institution remains a topic of national debate, this moment reminded many people why they cared. It wasn't about pageantry or old traditions. It was about the individuals behind the titles. As the king continued with his treatment, he reduced his public appearances but remained involved in key state matters. He continued meeting with the Prime Minister and receiving regular briefings. While he delegated some duties to other members of the royal family, he made it clear that he was still active and committed to his role. As heir to the throne, Prince William had always known that his father's role would one day become his. He had trained for it, studied it, and grown up watching the institution from the inside. But the idea of taking over the monarchy had always felt like something far into the future, something that would happen years down the line after a long and steady reign by King Charles. That illusion was broken when the king's health condition became public. Suddenly, the future seemed much closer than anyone had expected. At the same time, William was dealing with more than just the weight of succession. Behind palace doors, his wife, Princess Catherine, was also facing a serious health concern. What began as a private medical issue soon developed into something more significant, requiring both physical and emotional strength. The couple, already managing the expectations of royal life, now had to balance their roles with the growing reality of illness in both the older and younger generations of the family. The situation called for resilience. Catherine, known for her calm presence and steady approach to public life, chose to keep her condition private for as long as possible. She continued appearing at engagements, supporting her charities, and managing her royal duties without giving away any sign of what she was facing. But inside the family, the toll was felt. William had to support his wife, care for their 3 young children, and take on a growing number of royal responsibilities, all while carrying the emotional weight of his father's illness. On 22 March 2024, Catherine finally addressed the public. Her message was direct but gentle. She spoke about her health in honest terms, choosing her words carefully but not avoiding the reality. Her voice carried emotion, but she remained composed. The statement was met with widespread support. Many people praised her for the courage it took to share such a personal matter, especially in a role where privacy is often a luxury. This moment helped shape a new image of the royal family, one that was not only defined by ceremony and tradition, but also by openness and vulnerability. For many, Catherine's message was a turning point. She wasn't just a princess upholding formal duties. She was a mother, a partner, and someone going through a difficult personal challenge while remaining committed to her public role. As the couple dealt with these pressures, they were also thinking about their children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. William and Catherine made it a priority to shield them from public scrutiny and ensure they felt safe and loved. In the midst of national concern and intense media attention, they maintained a sense of normalcy at home. Family routines became more important than ever. School runs, bedtime stories, and quiet moments together helped keep things grounded, even while the outside world watched their every move. During this time, Prince William showed a new side of leadership. While he had always been prepared for his role as future king, the seriousness of his father's diagnosis pushed him into the spotlight in a new way. He started taking on more of the duties traditionally handled by the monarch. From public appearances to behind-the-scenes meetings with advisors and state officials, William began to step forward more often, not just as a prince, but as a future head of state in action. Observers noticed a shift. William's public appearances carried a deeper tone. He was still measured and composed, but there was a weight behind his words that hadn't always been there. He spoke more often about health, family, and the challenges people face in their daily lives. His experiences at home were starting to influence how he approached his royal work. It wasn't just about representing the crown anymore. It was about connecting with people in ways that felt real and relatable. Despite the growing demands, William and Catherine worked hard to maintain balance. They knew the country was watching, but they focused on what mattered most, supporting each other and staying present for their children. In public, they smiled, shook hands, and fulfilled their royal duties. But in private, they were navigating a storm of emotions, uncertainty, and pressure. This dual reality became the quiet backdrop of their lives during the first half of 2024. In the midst of this, Prince Harry returned to the UK for a private visit. Though his relationship with the family had been strained for years, he came after learning about his father's diagnosis. Meghan Markle did not accompany him, and her absence was noted, but expected. Harry's visit was brief and low profile, but symbolically important. It reminded the public, and the family, that in moments of true crisis, old conflicts can be set aside, even if just temporarily. The meeting between Harry and the rest of the family was not publicized in detail, but royal sources suggested that it was emotional and respectful. There was no clear sign of long-term reconciliation, but the fact that he came at all spoke volumes. It underscored how deeply the king's diagnosis had affected everyone, no matter how far removed they might have become. Still, the core responsibility remained with William and Catherine. Their steady presence became the foundation of the royal family during this time. As other family members stepped back or took on different roles, the spotlight focused more intensely on them. The public began to see them not just as future leaders, but as the face of a new chapter for the monarchy, one rooted in empathy, understanding, and emotional strength. Health experts and commentators pointed out that both King Charles's and Princess Catherine's openness had real-world effects. More people were booking doctor's appointments, looking into preventive health measures, and supporting charities focused on cancer care and research. In this way, the royal family's struggles reached beyond palace walls and touched the lives of ordinary citizens. Media coverage, which often focuses on drama and scandal within the royal family, took a more thoughtful tone. While there were still headlines and speculation, many stories focused on the human side of the royal experience. Reporters wrote about Catherine's grace under pressure, William's growing leadership, and the emotional weight of preparing for a future that was arriving sooner than expected. This period wasn't marked by major public ceremonies or political announcements. Instead, it was defined by quiet resilience. William and Catherine showed that leadership can also mean showing up in difficult times, listening more than speaking, and leading by example, even when the cameras are off. Looking ahead, their roles are expected to continue growing. With King Charles undergoing treatment and Queen Camilla focusing on his care, more responsibility is naturally shifting to the next generation. William and Catherine are already attending more official events, hosting important meetings, and representing the crown abroad. Their children remain their top priority, but the demands of royal life are steadily increasing. Even as the couple takes on more public work, they continue to focus on key areas that reflect their values. Catherine's work in early childhood development and mental health remains central to her public role. William continues to highlight environmental issues and homelessness, two areas he has long supported. Together, they are building a royal presence that feels more engaged and grounded, not just symbolic, but genuinely connected to the issues people care about. As part of this long-term vision, King Charles began making a series of thoughtful choices, not only about his own role, but also about who would take center stage in the years to come. Though he hadn't officially stepped back from royal duties, his illness had added urgency to decisions that had previously been reserved for some distant future. The result was a gradual but clear repositioning of Prince William and Princess Catherine as the monarchy's next central figures. Charles remained involved in state matters, attending key meetings and representing the crown on select occasions. But it was no longer just about performing duties. His role was increasingly about shaping legacy. Behind the scenes, he had started thinking carefully about how the royal family would evolve after him, and how it could survive and thrive in a world that often questioned the relevance of monarchy altogether. One of the most personal and deliberate choices he began to make involved Catherine, the Princess of Wales. For many years, Catherine had been a central part of royal life, but her rise had been quiet and measured. She had never rushed into the spotlight and was rarely involved in controversy. Over time, her consistency, calm nature, and dedication to her family and responsibilities helped her earn the trust of the public and respect from within the royal household. Charles, who had spent most of his life under the public microscope, recognized something important in Catherine. Through years of observation, especially during difficult times, he had come to admire how she carried herself. When challenges arose, whether within the family or in the media, she did not react publicly. She stayed focused on her role and maintained the kind of quiet stability that had long defined the best aspects of the monarchy. This respect led the king to consider a decision that few monarchs had dared to make before. He wanted Catherine to be officially recognized not just as William's wife or the future queen consort, but as a queen in her own right when the time came. While the title of queen consort is traditionally used for the wife of a king, Charles felt it was time to think differently. He believed that her contributions, strength, and popularity justified something more meaningful. Reports from inside the palace suggested that this idea had been building gradually, shaped by what Charles had witnessed in Catherine over the years. Unlike other royals who had faced public scrutiny or struggled with their roles, Catherine had remained steady. She had supported William without demanding attention and had carved out a clear identity within the royal family. Her work on mental health, early childhood, and family well-being had earned her admiration across different generations and political backgrounds. The king's idea wasn't just symbolic. He saw it as a practical move to help secure the monarchy's future. In a time when the institution faced pressure to modernize, having a strong, relatable figure like Catherine at the center could be an asset. People across the UK had come to see her not only as a royal, but as someone who understood the modern world. She had grown up in an ordinary family, attended public schools, and entered royal life through a path that reflected more of the public's everyday experience. Unlike Diana, who came from nobility, or Camilla, whose family had long-standing ties to the upper class, Catherine was raised in a middle-class household. Her parents worked in aviation and party planning. She was educated, athletic, and polite, but her background was not steeped in aristocratic tradition. This made her story different, and appealing to a public often tired of elite narratives. Her journey to royalty wasn't sudden. She had been with Prince William for nearly a decade before they married in 2011. Over those years, she was closely watched by both the press and the palace. It wasn't always easy, but she showed patience and resilience. Even when newspapers criticized her for waiting too long for a proposal or called her names like Waity Katie, she didn't react publicly. She kept her distance from drama, focusing instead on building a strong relationship with William and preparing for her future role. After Queen Elizabeth passed away in 2022, Catherine's public role grew significantly. She began attending more engagements, leading charity projects, and speaking out on key issues. Despite her increasing workload, she continued to prioritize family life, maintaining a routine for her children and staying grounded in her responsibilities as a parent. By early 2024, her influence had grown to the point where she was regularly seen as one of the most respected members of the royal family. Public opinion polls showed consistent support for her, even as other royals faced criticism or declining popularity. Many commentators noted that Catherine had quietly become the monarchy's strongest asset. King Charles took notice of this shift. While tradition dictated certain formal roles and titles, Charles believed it was time to move beyond what had always been done. He had lived through the weight of outdated rules and had seen how rigid structures sometimes caused more harm than good. He didn't want his son and daughter-in-law to carry the same burdens. He wanted to give them a more stable foundation, one based not only on birthright, but on merit and public trust. As a result, palace insiders began to talk about new honors and increased responsibilities for Catherine. She was invited to more high-level meetings, began representing the crown at more significant events, and was seen more often at the king's side. Charles wasn't just positioning her for the future, he was already placing her at the heart of the monarchy. Political leaders and public figures began to take notice. In an increasingly divided world, Catherine represented something rare: consistency and calm. She avoided controversy, did her work quietly, and didn't chase the spotlight. In doing so, she became a figure people could admire and rely on. For a monarchy trying to stay relevant without abandoning its identity, she seemed like the right person to help lead it forward. The king's health remained a factor in all of this. Though he continued performing some duties, he was clearly thinking about succession in more practical terms. His illness had forced him to consider what would happen if he could no longer carry out his role fully. He knew that the public and the world at large would be watching closely to see who would take over. By elevating Catherine now, he was helping the public get used to the idea that she would one day stand as queen, not just in title, but in presence and influence. For Prince William, this shift carried emotional and practical meaning. He saw how much his father valued Catherine's role and understood the importance of preparing for the future in a careful, thoughtful way. Rather than rushing to claim authority or power, William followed his father's example. He focused on service, stability, and continuing the work that had defined the best parts of the royal legacy. Together, William and Catherine were no longer just the next in line. They were already shaping the future of the monarchy, taking on more responsibilities and becoming central to the institution's public image. Their actions, speeches, and choices were setting the tone for a new generation of royal leadership, one that honored tradition but adapted to modern values. As the public continued to respond positively, the king's vision seemed to be working. His decision to recognize Catherine's strength and place her firmly in the royal spotlight reflected a more human, thoughtful side of monarchy. It showed that leadership isn't only about power or protocol. It's also about recognizing the people who have quietly, consistently earned their place. One of the key components of this planning involves a long-established but rarely discussed process known as Operation Menai Bridge. This is the code name for the detailed plan that would go into effect in the event of King Charles's passing. Like Operation London Bridge, which was used following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, this plan outlines the steps that would ensure continuity, order, and respect during a time of national mourning and transition. The public may never see all the details of such operations, but their existence is no secret. Royal advisors, government officials, and senior members of the royal household review and update these plans regularly. They cover everything from how the news will be announced to how the body will be transported, what ceremonies will take place, and when the coronation of the next monarch would be held. If the king were to pass away, Prince William would automatically become king. This change in status happens immediately, even before the formal coronation. It is a constitutional fact that the heir becomes monarch the moment the predecessor dies. In practical terms, though, there would still be a waiting period before the new king is crowned. When Queen Elizabeth II died, King Charles waited several months before his own coronation in May 2023. A similar delay would be expected for Prince William. In the days following such an event, the country would enter a period of mourning. Flags would be lowered to half-mast, and the UK would observe several days of national reflection. A formal notice would be placed outside Buckingham Palace, bordered in black, confirming the king's passing. The king's body would then lie in state, likely at Westminster Abbey, where members of the public would be able to pay their respects. These ceremonial steps are steeped in tradition, but they also serve a practical purpose. They allow time for the country to process the change, and for the next monarch to prepare for the responsibilities ahead. They also offer a rare moment of unity, as people from across the UK and the Commonwealth gather to honor a life of service and reflect on what comes next. If the king's health were to decline further before his passing, another possibility might come into play: a regency. The Regency Act of 1937 allows for a senior royal to take on the monarch's duties if the king or queen is unable to fulfill them due to illness or incapacity. In such a case, Prince William could become Prince Regent and take over the day-to-day responsibilities of the crown, even while Charles remains the official monarch. For this to happen, at least 3 out of 5 senior figures, including Queen Camilla, the Lord Chancellor, the Speaker of the House of Commons, the Lady Chief Justice, and the Master of the Rolls, would need to sign a formal declaration confirming the king's inability to perform his duties. The king himself would not be involved in the decision. The last time a regency occurred was over 2 centuries ago, so while rare, it is a legal mechanism designed to maintain stability in extraordinary circumstances. If King Charles were to pass away before Queen Camilla, she would likely be given the title Queen Dowager, meaning the widow of the king. She would not be known as the Queen Mother, a title that is traditionally reserved for the mother of a reigning monarch. That title, had she lived, would have gone to Princess Diana. Camilla would continue to have a role, but it would be much more limited. She would likely remain involved in some of the causes she has long supported, such as reading, domestic violence prevention, and military charities. However, it is also expected that she would move to a smaller home and step away from the daily affairs of the monarchy. Her future presence in public life would depend largely on the preferences of the next monarch, Prince William. Within the royal family, these upcoming changes have already sparked important conversations. According to reports from sources close to the palace, Princess Anne recently organized a private family meeting. It was not a ceremonial event, but a serious, closed-door discussion. The entire family, including Prince Harry, was said to be present, although Meghan Markle did not attend. Her absence was not unexpected, given her current relationship with the royal institution. The meeting reportedly covered not just emotional topics, but also strategic planning. Voices were raised, and emotions were visible. It was a sign of just how personal and complicated the transition of power can be, even within a family that is used to operating under the public eye. Interestingly, Princess Anne took the lead in communicating some of the most difficult messages. Known for her no-nonsense attitude and loyalty to duty, Anne has long been a respected figure within the royal household. It is said that King Charles asked her to deliver certain points because of her clarity and composure, qualities that were especially important in such a sensitive conversation. At the center of this meeting was a new understanding. While Prince William is unquestionably the next king, the royal family may benefit from finding a new role, however limited, for Prince Harry. Since stepping down from royal duties in 2020, Harry has lived in the United States and spoken openly about his frustrations with royal life. His memoir, published in early 2023, revealed deeply personal details that caused tension within the family. Still, his recent visit and ongoing concern for his father suggest that some connection remains. Discussions are reportedly taking place about how Harry might be included in the royal family's future in a reduced, non-official capacity. His return to full royal status seems unlikely, but the idea of him playing a more visible role during moments of national importance has not been ruled out. The reasoning is simple: unity matters. At a time when the monarchy is facing generational change and shifting public opinions, having both of Charles's sons seen together, even briefly, could help maintain public trust. It wouldn't fix all the past issues, but it could offer a small step toward healing, something the family may need as it moves into a new era. This moment also raises questions about whether Prince Harry will eventually release another book. In past interviews, he has hinted at the existence of more material not included in his first memoir. Royal experts believe that if a second book were to be published, it might come after King Charles's passing. Out of respect, Harry may be waiting for a time when the impact on his father would no longer be a concern. This possibility adds another layer of complexity to the royal transition. While the family focuses on unity, the potential for renewed public criticism and personal revelations remains in the background. William, in particular, is said to feel strongly about protecting the monarchy's image and legacy. Some believe that if and when he becomes king, he may formally remove the remaining royal titles from Harry and Meghan.